Welcome back. This is Chapter 3, Software. All computer software can basically be categorized as either system software or application software. System software is typically what folks think of as the software that comes on their computer when they buy it, but it's not always the case. Think of system software as the operating system itself. For example, you'll notice on this computer here, I'm using a Macintosh. I can come up here and say about this Mac, and it tells me that I'm using Mac OS X 10.10.3 Yosemite. That's my operating system. Now, whenever you buy a Mac and it has this particular operating system on it, it's going to come with some software already installed that's kind of integrated as part of the operating system. Software like the Safari web browser and a couple of other things. They're integrated into the operating system. Most of you are probably comfortable and more familiar with, say, Windows 7, for example. This is an example of Windows 7, and you can see it's actually, in this particular case, it's Windows 7 Professional. But as I come in here and I look at the actual operating system properties, I can see that this particular version of Windows 7 is Windows 7, let's see, Professional 64-bit operating system. So that tells me about the operating system, and you know whenever you buy a computer that has Windows 7, it's going to automatically come with Internet Explorer. That's going to be part of the operating system. So whenever you think about system software, think of it as the operating system that the device runs. Ultimately, computers are nothing more than boxes that blink until you put software on them. They have to have an operating system. The operating system basically forms the link between the user and the hardware inside of the computer. For example, if I wanted to access and open a file that I had created yesterday, I would move my mouse, I would find the file, I would double click on the file, and that's going to tell the hard drive, the operating system is going to take my motions and my movements and translate those into instructions for the hardware. It's going to tell the hard drive to spin up, find a file, open the file using whatever software application it happens to be using. Now, the most common, the most popular ones in the world are probably, obviously Windows 7, very, very popular operating system. The Macintosh OS X, another very popular operating system. But don't overlook some of the other operating systems that are out there. For example, if you have an Android-based cell phone, your smartphone is basically a little computer. Android is the operating system, and there are certain things that are included with the operating system. In particular, you have the Play Store, you have the browser, you have your email client, and so forth. All of those are part of the operating system, so you can tell that that's system software. Same thing with iOS. If you have an iPad, if you have an iPhone or something like that, the iOS basically is this. It's the interface between you, the user, and the hardware that's actually in the device. If you click on, for example, the camera, that tells the camera to open the shutter, and let's start taking some pictures. So we have Windows, we have Mac, we have iOS, we have Android, but there are other ones out there as well. Don't just be, kind of cornered into thinking that you only have those four choices. You have two for mobile devices and you have two for desktop devices. It doesn't work that way. Back in the old days, when computers did not have pretty interfaces, every computer that you used, the operating system looked kind of like this. It's what's called a command line interface, or a terminal. And if I wanted to do something with a computer, I had to know what commands to type in order to be able to see things like folders and to open files and open folders and things like that. This is the terminal in Mac, and even though Macintosh has a graphical user interface, or a GUI, you can still see that the terminal is still there. It hasn't been lost. Same thing over here in Windows 7. Windows 7 has a graphical user interface. It's very pretty. I can move the mouse and click, I'm here. I come down here, I click, I'm there. But Microsoft Windows, pretty much all versions, still have a command line interface. Some people call it DOS, some people call it the command line. Whatever you want to call it doesn't really matter. The thing to keep in mind is that it's kind of the same idea. You know, back in the day when computers didn't have all these fancy graphics and all these pretty pictures, all computer operations were basically done at a command line similar to this. Now, thank goodness we don't have to do that today. Can you imagine running your cell phone with just a command line? I don't think that would be very fun. But we have all of this system software that's included with our computers whenever we buy them. Sure, if you build your own computer, you can install whatever operating system you so choose. But understand that this graphical user interface, this GUI, has come a long way. Let me show you some pictures. Back in the day, this is what the Macintosh operating system looked like. It was graphical. You could move your mouse and click up here or click over here or something like that. It was graphical and it looked okay. But look at it today. I mean, you can obviously tell the graphics are much better. The pictures are much better. It's not this blocky, sharp-cornered thing that it was back in the day. Same thing with Microsoft. This is a picture of Microsoft Windows 95, and I don't know if you remember it or not. Windows 95 kind of looks similar to Windows 7 today, or maybe even Windows 2000 or XP or something, but the graphics weren't nearly as good as they are today. So as time has gone on, we have come into this. This is the newest Windows operating system. This is Windows 8. You can tell there are tiles. It's made kind of specifically for a touchscreen computer, but you can certainly use it with a mouse. So this graphical user interface, this system software, is important because it gives the user their experience. Like I said, the system software is the interface between the user and the hardware that's actually on the computer. But this basically forms our interface. It's what we see, it's what we experience. I've already shown you Android and iOS. Let me kind of show you another alternative. We've talked about Windows, we've talked about Mac. How about this? There is a piece of system software or a version of system software called Linux. Linux is a free operating system. Free as in open source. You can download the source code, and if you're a programmer, make some changes and call it your own. As long as you give it away for free and don't charge people for it, it's fine. This is Ubuntu, or some folks call it Ubuntu. It is a distribution of Linux, and you'll notice that it obviously has great graphics. It has this wonderful GUI, but it kind of has almost a Macintoshy look, Macintosh feel. You have your menus, your dock over here on the side, menus across the top, pretty straightforward stuff. Here is a different distribution of Linux. This one is called Fedora, and it kind of has more of a Windows feel. You have a start button down in the bottom left, a time and such in the bottom right. Again, it's system software. It allows you to open windows and see folders and see files and things like that. In the world of Linux, Linux is fascinating. We actually teach a course out here specifically on Linux. In the world of Linux, the operating system is nothing more than that command line interface that I showed you earlier. The operating system is built on what's called the kernel. The kernel is the interface between the user and the hardware. And the pretty graphics that you stick on top of it to make it easy to use, they really depend on what you want. If you're a Windows user and you'd like to use Linux, here is KDE, the K desktop environment. It has very much a Windows look and a Windows feel. Start button in the bottom left, time in the bottom right, taskbar, Windows. So if I'm a Windows user trying to switch over to Linux, I could use this graphical desktop, this GUI, and feel pretty much right at home. Likewise, if I'm a Mac user and I decide that I want to use Linux, I can use something called GNOME. GNOME has a very Macintosh look and feel. Menus across the top, time at the top. You know, it really depends on what you're coming from to what you're trying to do. Linux is not a mainstream operating system. And because it's not mainstream, it doesn't have the cult following that Mac or that Windows has, so it kind of has to be everything to everybody. If it's going to draw a crowd, it has to be great for the Windows people, it has to be great for the Linux people. So whenever you're thinking of system software, think of the operating system, what you see when you boot up your computer. Also think of what happens whenever you double click a folder. You get a window that opens. That's part of the system software doing that. When you plug in a brand new printer or a brand new camera, the computer automatically recognizes that printer or that camera and it interfaces with it. The operating system is responsible for that. Again, keep in mind system software is nothing more than the interface between the user and the hardware of the computer. Now, as we keep flipping forward through chapter 3 in our textbook, we're going to run into application software. Now, application software is different. Application software is stuff that you buy or you download that gives your computer extra functionality. For example, if you're a really big into digital photos, you're probably going to download an application like Photoshop or something like that that's going to give your computer extra functionality. In this particular case, you can see I'm using a Mac, but I like to be able to use Windows as well, and I even like to be able to use Linux when I need without having to have 3 different computers in my office. So what I'm going to do is I actually bought a piece of software called VMware Fusion. VMware Fusion will allow you install it on your Mac, and it will allow you to basically have little virtual machines. I can have Linux machines, I can have Windows machines, I can even have Windows servers, all for different purposes. So that's what's actually running now. I have VMware Fusion running, and so I have my Mac, and then if I slide to the next screen over, now I have my Windows 7 computer. And the Windows 7 thinks that it is on a dedicated set of hardware. So in the Macintosh world, you buy these extra application software packages. As a matter of fact, I'm using iShowU HD. I'm actually using a trial version of it to make this video. That's application software. The most common, most popular types of application software are going to be like your Microsoft Office products or your Office products. In this particular case, on this Mac, I have Chrome, Firefox, that's application software, iDVD, GarageBand. I actually bought a copy of Pages, which is the Macintosh version of Word, Keynote, which is the Mac version of PowerPoint's presentation software, Numbers, which is spreadsheet software, it's kind of the equivalent to Excel, Text Wrangler, VirtualBox, and a couple of other parts and pieces. You can notice in my application drawer here, I have quite a few applications that are installed on this Mac. Now, these did not come with the Mac. They basically are things that I added to give me extra functionality. And it's the same thing in a Windows environment. You'll notice this Windows 7 machine, I have Chrome, I have QuickTime, no big deal. Programmer's Notepad, no big deal. I have a program called WAMP Server, which if you take CIS110 Introduction to Programming and Logic, you'll find out more about WAMP Server. And then I have a piece of software installed on here called Web Plus X4. Basically, Web Plus is web page editing, web page authoring software. Did not come with Windows. I had to add that extra. That's going to be considered application software. So you have, your basics, the things that you would typically see, your word processing and so forth. There are even, let me fire up Safari. There are even other Office application software that's out there in case you don't want to buy a copy of Microsoft Office. I mean, let's face it, not everyone can afford it. So let's say you wanted an Office suite on your computer, but you didn't have the money to afford it. You could try something called OpenOffice. OpenOffice is a Microsoft compatible Office suite. It has a word processor, it has presentation software, it has a database, it has drawing software, it has spreadsheet software, pretty much the same thing as a Microsoft Office suite. Best of all, it's completely free, doesn't cost anything, and you can download versions for Windows, for Mac, and for Linux. Well, along that same thinking, there's a product called LibreOffice. LibreOffice is, again, it's kind of built off of the OpenOffice framework, but what LibreOffice is kind of a little different look, a little fancier feel, but it has the exact same parts and pieces that you would expect in any typical Office suite. Writer, which is a word processor, Calc, which is a spreadsheet, Impress, it's presentation software, Drawing, database, mathematics, charts, so forth and so on. And you can see from the screenshots, they look a lot like the Microsoft compatible options. So you could actually download LibreOffice or OpenOffice, put it on your home computer, create Word documents and take them to your office and open them, edit them, have no problems whatsoever. So there are other alternatives than paid software. I'm a pretty big fan of free software. If there's a free product that's out there, I want to try to find it. I want to try to use it and become pretty comfortable with it. Like I said earlier, a lot of folks are really into digital photos, so there's a chance that they're going to be using something like a Photoshop or what have you. There is a product called GIMP, GNU Image Manipulation Program. It is basically a Photoshop clone, completely free. You can see from a couple of the screenshots here, it has a lot of functionality. It does a lot of things. If you're a digital photo person, you can make a photo black and white, take out red eye, adjust, all the different things that you want to adjust. So you have all these free alternatives. Don't be kind of forced into thinking that if you want good software, you have to pay a lot of money for it. That's not the case. There are good alternatives that are out there that are free as well. And there's other programs. There's programs that are specifically designed to work with digital audio, digital video, digital photos, all sorts of things that are out there. Take a look around. If you have a particular need, do a Google search for something like a free photo manipulation program, free video editing program, and you'll probably find some pretty good alternatives. As a matter of fact, VMware Fusion that I'm using to run Windows 7 inside of this Mac is kind of an expensive product. VirtualBox is similar and completely free. So again, keep in mind your system software is going to be forming the interface between the user and the hardware of the computer. The application software is going to be used to give you extra functionality to do the things that you want to do on your computer.